Hello, everybody. I'll be presenting the management of COVID-19 infection in pregnant women. So I'll be covering a brief overview, then diagnosis and assessment of the severity. And basically, I will be focusing on the management part of COVID-19 positive pregnant women having mild or moderate or severe infection. Then the management during labor and delivery, then their postpartum care and discharge policy. And then I'll be covering a bit about vaccination. So a brief overview about COVID-19 infection during pregnancy is that pregnancy does not increase the risk of acquiring the COVID infection. But it has been found that the morbidity and mortality is higher in the women having the moderate to severe infection. And 2/3 of the women, they are infected and they are asymptomatic. And 15% they require hospitalization and only 5% require the intensive care. Then most of the women who are symptomatic, they have the mild flu-like symptoms, and 40% of the women they have cough and fever, and less than 20% of the women they present with dyspnea, myalgia, loss of taste, and diarrhea. So there is no conclusive and direct evidence of a vertical transmission of COVID infection, but there is a small risk in the third trimester. And there is no increased risk of abortion or congenital anomalies or amniotic fluid abnormality like oligohydramnios or stillbirth or the neonatal death. But there is a slight increase in the risk of preterm birth among the women having the COVID infection. Then coming to the diagnosis and assessment of the severity. Now, how to define a patient as a suspect? Now, it is considered on the basis of clinical and epidemiological criteria. So, clinical criteria is that if a patient presents with acute onset of fever and cough, or she has at least 3 or more of the features, which includes cough, shortness of breath, sore throat, myalgia, dyspnea, fever, general weakness, headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or altered mental status. Then epidemiological criteria includes if the patient has the history of travel to and fro from the hotspot area, or she is residing or working in a high-risk area, or she is working in a healthcare settings during the past 2 weeks prior to the onset of symptom. And patient can also be suspected on the basis of clinical criteria only if she presents with severe acute respiratory illness, which means she has fever and at least one sign or symptom of the respiratory disease, and she requires hospitalization. And there is no other or alternative diagnosis that can explain the clinical presentation. So in such cases also, they can be called as a suspect. Then who are the probable cases? Now, probable cases can be a patient who has all the clinical criteria, which I have just mentioned, or she has a contact with a probable or a confirmed case. Then other criteria can be if a suspected patient, she has a positive chest imaging, or a patient who has a recent onset of anosmia, that is loss of smell, or ageusia, that is loss of taste, in absence of any other identified cause. Or if a patient has a death, which is not otherwise explained, and she was having a respiratory distress before her mortality, then also she can be considered as a probable case. And plus, she should have a history of contact with a confirmed case or a probable case. So these are the case definition for probable case. And we call a patient as a confirmed case if she has a lab confirmation of COVID-19 infection, irrespective of her clinical signs and symptoms. So now assessing the severity of disease in pregnancy. Now it is divided into mild, moderate, severe, and critical. So under mild category, the patient they presents with flu-like symptoms and they can have some myalgia and anosmia. In moderate category, the patient presents with pneumonia and lower respiratory tract infection. She can be dyspneic and she presents with a refractory fever, which is more than 39 degrees. It is not settling with the conservative management. But if the patient has a respiratory rate of more than 30, her saturation is less than 94%, and there is more than 50% lung involvement on imaging, that means she falls in the category of severe. Then the critical variety includes if the patient has a multiple organ dysfunction or shock or a respiratory failure, which requires mechanical ventilation or high flow nasal concentrators. Now coming to the management of COVID-19 positive pregnant women. So now asymptomatic women or women having a mild infection at any trimester, they can be managed at home. So, but we have to counsel the patient regarding the home isolation. And home isolation should be considered if the patient has a separate room and she has a well-ventilated room with a separate toilet facilities. Otherwise, we should counsel the patient for COVID care facility. Then, patient usually don't require admission if they are having a mild infection or they are asymptomatic. But yes, if they have any obstetric complications or any obstetric indication, for example, they have a hypertension or they are in labor or they have a diabetes or vaginal bleeding or any indication, then she may require the admission. Otherwise, COVID-19 infection per se in a mild or asymptomatic cases does not require admission during pregnancy. And most important thing is that we have to counsel the patient. They should remain calm. They should not be panicked because a lot of havoc has been created by the COVID infection. So we have to counsel them positively. And they should always be in a touch with the doctors. They should always be connected to their doctors telephonically. Then while the patient, she is having in the home isolation, then we have to give her a conservative treatment. We have to treat her fever with antipyretics like paracetamol, and a maximum dose of 650 milligrams 4 times a day is considered. Then she should take a warm saline gargle and a steam twice a day, and adequate nutrition and hydration is very important. And usually the investigations are not required in the cases of mild infection. So now what are the tips on home isolation? Now, most important tip is that the patient has to isolate from the other family members, and she should not mingle with the family member at all. Or she can be connected to the family members telephonically or with a video call. She has to take adequate rest and maintain a good hydration, and she has to stay in a well ventilated room, and she has to obey the respiratory and hand hygiene. Then a triple layer mask has to be worn by the patient, that is N95, and she should dispose after 8 hours and only after disinfecting it with 1% hypochlorite. Then self-monitoring for the patient. When patient is at home, we have to give her a chart, or we can draw the monitoring points in a piece of paper and explain her that every day she has to record. So she has to write the date and then every 4 hours. So the time also has to be recorded. So she has to record the temperature, she has to record the heart rate and saturation, which is reflected on the pulse oximeter. Then she has to also record her symptoms, whether she is feeling better or the same or she is becoming worse. Then her breathing pattern, again, if she is becoming better or it is same or becoming worse. Now the pulse oximeter recording, now some care has to be taken by the patient. Certain points are to be remembered by the patient, that she has to should not wear the nail polish. That is very important. And before putting her finger inside the pulse oximeter, she should clean her hands with the soap and water or with the sanitizer, which is alcohol based sanitizer. Then she should put her finger completely inside the pulse oximeter, and then she can read the respiratory pulse rate and saturation. Then there are few instructions for the caregivers or the attendants. Now they should always wear a N95 mask whenever they are entering the patient's room, and mask should not be touched from the front, and they have to, a lot of care has to be taken, and it should be changed immediately, and it should be discarded appropriately. The mask should not be thrown here and there, and proper hygiene also has to be maintained after the disposal of the mask. Then when the patient is coming in contact with the with her attendant, then she has to maintain a distance from the attendants. so that her secretions, that is the oral secretion or respiratory secretion, do not spill over her. Then attendant, they should wear a disposable gloves while they are handling the patient. And the gloves can be disposable or it can be reusable, but if we are reusing them, then it has to be washed carefully with the detergent. It has to be dried in the sun and then it can be reused. Now similarly, the patient utensils, dishes and her water bottles or the bedding also has to be cleaned with the detergent, soap. It has to be dried properly and then it can be reused. And the person who is attending, and once that comes out of the room, the attendant should wash the hand carefully and discard the mask properly. Then apart from these measures, the pregnant patient should take a balanced diet. She has to continue her iron and folic acid, calcium supplementation, and her blood pressure monitoring also is very important, especially if she is having a hypertensive disorders. Then a daily fetal movement count has to be taught to the patient, and patient has to be educated about the red flag sign. That means when she has to report to the hospital immediately. Now the symptoms of red flag sign includes if there is a worsening of the shortness of breath, or she is not able to tolerate the fluids or the drug, or she is having a persistent pleuritic type of chest pain, or she is having a new onset of confusion or lethargy. Now, apart from this, if she has any other obstetric complaint, for example, preterm contractions, vaginal bleeding, or decreased fetal movement, then also she should seek the medical attention. Then the signs includes if she is becoming more breathless, more tachypneic, or she is having a refractory fever which is not settling and it is more than 39 degrees, or the saturation level is less than 94% at the room temperature, or if she is having a blue colored lips, face or fingertips, then also she has to seek the immediate medical attention. Now, if the patient is doing well during home isolation and it is already 10 days after the onset of the symptom and there is no fever for past 3 days, then she can discontinue the home isolation and there is no need for testing after the home isolation period is over. Now, if the patient is having a mild or asymptomatic illness and if she is admitted, now usually the patient may be admitted because of the obstetric indication. Now, in that case, the patient vital monitoring, again, it has to be done every 4 hourly, which includes temperature, pulse rate, respiratory rate, and saturation level. She has to maintain a nutrition and hydration and supplementation. Then a symptomatic treatment, again, antipyretic, which is paracetamol, then antitussives for the cough suppression. And apart from that, the budesonide inhaler, 800 micrograms twice a day is also considered. Then injection enoxaparin, that is 40 milligrams subcutaneously once a day, can be considered for about 7 to 10 days after the risk assessment as per the hospital protocol. Then maternal and fetal survey. Apart from this, other maternal and fetal surveillance can be done as per the case. Now coming to the management of moderate COVID-19 pregnant women. Now here, most important thing is that we have to investigate the patient also. In the mild cases, investigation was not needed, but in moderate cases, investigation is an important part apart from monitoring and management. So again, we have to monitor temperature, heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, pulse oximetry every 4 hours. And investigation includes the CBC and KFT and LFT every 24 to 48 hours, and C-reactive protein and D-dimer every 48 to 72 hours. Chest X-ray and 12 lead ECG is indicated, and CT scan is with abdominal shield is indicated only if there is a worsening of the symptoms. Now the reference range for the pro-inflammatory markers are different for the pregnant women. That includes the D-dimer in the first trimester, the upper level can be 1200. Then in second trimester, upper level can be up to 3200, and in third trimester it can be 3300. Then LDH, the normal value is less than 400 units per liter, but if it is more than 400, it falls in the high risk category. Then CRP, the normal value is less than 5, and if it is more than 100, means it is a high risk. Then the principles of the management, the most important component is the oxygen therapy and the drugs. Now the drugs includes steroids, anticoagulants and antibiotics, and then supportive treatment. Now oxygen therapy, it can be done by the nasal cannula, or it could be a venturi mask or a face mask or a non-rebreathing mask. And then awake proning is very important. And if the patient is less than 20 weeks, then the proning can be done, as we can see the picture number 1, 5 and 6. But if the patient is more than 20 weeks and because of the big gravid uterus, then she cannot lie prone. Then she can either lie on the left lateral position or the right lateral position, or she can sit up at 30 to 60 degrees. And this should be followed for about 30 minutes to 2 hours. Then the drug therapy, most important, it includes the steroids. Now, IV methylprednisolone 0.5 to 1 milligrams per kg per day can be given, or IV dexamethasone 6 milligrams twice a day for about 5 to 10 days can be given. This also helps in the fetal lung maturity, particularly if the baby is less than 34 weeks. Then anticoagulation includes low molecular weight heparin, that is enoxaparin, 40 milligrams per day subcutaneously can be given, or unfractionated heparin 5000 international unit subcutaneously 12 hourly can be given. But if we have to stop anticoagulation 12 hours before the scheduled cesarean or induction of labor. Then antibiotics, usually IV ceftriaxone 1 gram twice a day is considered. Now coming to the antiviral drugs like remdesivir, now we have to consider that this is an authorized drug for the emergency use, and it has to be used only if the benefits outweigh the risk. And monoclonal antibodies or polyclonal cocktail, all these drugs, they are the authorized for emergency use, and they should always be considered only after with a discussion with the physician. Then ivermectin and doxycycline is contraindicated during pregnancy and it should not be given. Then there are certain early warning signs for severe illness, which includes the increased sensation of dyspnea or inability to maintain adequate oxygen saturation, or there is a persistent or more frequent fevers, or if there's a worsening of myalgia. So these are the early warning signs, and we should think that the patient is heading towards a severe illness, and we should manage the patient appropriately. Then coming to the management of the severe COVID-19 infection during pregnancy. Now, most important is that the patient has to be admitted in the HDU, that is a high dependency unit or intensive care unit. And again, we have to monitor, investigate and manage, but the patient having the severe illness should be managed after discussion with the physician and also at times with the anesthetist. Here the monitoring, the frequency is every 1 to 2 hourly, which includes temperature, heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure and pulse oximetry. Then investigation, again it includes the CBC, then KFT, LFT every 24 hours, then CRP and D-dimer every 48 hours, and chest X-ray, ECG, and then echo can be considered if there's abnormality in the ECG, and CT scan can also be considered in the cases of severe infection. Then the principles of management, the most important component include oxygen therapy, drugs, which includes steroids, anticoagulants and antibiotics. Then other most important is the supportive therapy, which includes IV fluids and vasopressors. Now again, I am repeating, the patient who is having a severe illness, the management has to be done with a close discussion with the physician and at times with anesthetist. Now we have to, if the saturation is less than 94%, we have to give her oxygen. We can give by the conventional therapy with a mask or a cannula and then prone positioning. If that doesn't work, then we can go for the non-invasive ventilation, which includes BiPAP or CPAP or a non-rebreathable mask, or the high flow nasal cannula should be considered. And intubation or the mechanical ventilation, it is the last resort when everything has failed. Then coming to the drugs, again, the steroids and the anticoagulation is very important. Here the dose is slightly different. IV methylprednisolone is 1 to 2 milligrams per kg per day into 2 divided doses, whereas in moderate cases we were giving 0.5 to 1 milligrams per kg per day. Then IV Dexa can be considered, which is 6 milligrams twice a day for 5 to 10 days. Then anticoagulation, now in the cases of severe variety, enoxaparin 0.5 milligrams per kg per dose can be considered twice a day subcutaneously. Or unfractionated heparin, that is 5,000 international units subcutaneously, can be given for 12 hours at a 12-hourly interval. But anticoagulation has to be stopped at least 12 hours prior to scheduled cesarean or induction. Then coming to the antiviral remdesivir, now there is no known fetal toxicity which is associated with remdesivir. And again, I repeat, we have to use only when we think that the benefit outweigh the risk. Then another drug, that is tocilizumab. Again, there is no enough data which is available about its use in pregnancy, but we can use in severe cases only when there is a markedly raised C-reactive protein and there is no improvement on steroids and there is no other active bacterial, fungal or tubercular infection. Then coming to the antibiotics, we have to individualize the case. And in the severe category, it is always better to start her on a broad spectrum antibiotics, which can include piperacillin, tazobactam, linezolid, vancomycin, or meropenem. Then the fluid management is very, very important. I'm not going into the details because there are other lectures on it. So we should try and give the bolus in the volume of 250 to 500 ml and then assess for the fluid overload before proceeding with further fluid resuscitation. Then we have to maintain her BP, and the target BP should be mean arterial pressure should be more than 65 millimeters of mercury. So the drug of choice is norepinephrine, and if it doesn't work, then we can use the dobutamine. Now the dose of norepinephrine, it is about 2 ampules. If each ampule is about 4 milligrams per 2 ml, then we have to dissolve in 100 ml of normal saline, and we can start at the rate of 16 microdrops per minute, and then we can escalate. And dobutamine, the preparation, it requires 1 ampule, which is of 250 milligrams. Then it has to be dissolved in 500 ml of 5% dextrose, and it should be started at the rate of 6 microdrops per minute, and then it can be escalated. Then the fetal surveillance is also very important. The patient has to maintain a fetal movement kick count, but that is not possible in the severe category. So better is to use the handheld Doppler or the CTG machine every 6 hours. Using the step, it is not advisable because of the close proximity it is required. Then non-stress testing and the ultrasound, it is indicated as per the case. Now coming to the management of labor and delivery. Now there is no indication for doing the cesarean or induction because of COVID infection per se. But induction or cesarean can be considered only if there is a obstetric indication. And the other indication where we can consider termination of pregnancy is that if the patient has a refractory hypoxemia. Now, refractory hypoxemia means if the patient is not able to maintain a PaO2 of more than 70 millimeters of mercury with a maximum FiO2 despite efforts to optimize the ventilation. So in that case, it can be considered, but after the consultation with the anesthetist and the physician, we can consider. Now, there is regarding the termination of the pregnancy, we have to always individualize the case. We have to always discuss with our team, and if the patient is having a asymptomatic or she is having a mild illness, and if she is less than 39 weeks and there is no obstetric or medical indication, then delivery is not required till the isolation is over. But if she is having a medical problems and obstetric indication, then as per the hospital protocol, termination of pregnancy can be considered. And if the patient is more than 39 weeks, the delivery can be considered before the onset of labor. Then the labor monitoring, it has to be done as per the routine protocol. Continuous electronic fetal monitoring should be considered. and hourly oxygen saturation, respiratory rate, and pulse rate should be monitored. And always our aim should be to maintain the oxygen saturation level more than 94%. Epidural analgesia is not a contraindication, it can be considered. And the most important thing is that we should avoid the prolonged oxytocin infusion and the volume overload in the severe cases. Then instrumentation can be considered to cut short the second stage of labor if it is indicated. Active management of third stage has to be considered, and we should avoid the carboprost, which is prostadine or PGF2 alpha, because it can precipitate the respiratory symptom. Then delayed cord clamping, skin to skin contact, and early initiation of breastfeeding is recommended. And after delivery, the PPIUCD should be encouraged. Now, if we are doing a cesarean section, then we should have a dedicated COVID OT, and a neonatal resuscitation trolley should be at least 2 meters away from the OT table. And prior intimation to anesthetist and neonatologist is very important, and we should arrange for the blood and blood product as per the case, and consent has to be obtained from the relatives when they are in the green zone. Then while we are performing cesarean section or any surgical procedure, we should do in a dedicated OT, and the minimum number of persons should be present in the OT, and to and fro movement should always be avoided. And regional anesthesia should be preferred, but if the general anesthesia is required, then we should ensure the proper care, and all the patients should wear the PPE kit, and post-op care should be done as per the standards. Now coming to the postpartum care and discharge policy. Now in our setup, usually all the babies who are born to the COVID positive mothers, they are kept in the nursery, and once the mother is discharged, then the baby is handed over to the mother, and express breast milk is given to the babies until unless the patient is critically ill. Then injection enoxaparin 40 milligrams subcutaneously once a day is considered for about 7 to 10 days. But then again, we have to individualize the risk assessment, and then the duration depends upon whether they are in a moderate or a severe category. Contraception is very, very important. PPIUCD or the injection Anta should be considered. And usually if the patient is doing well and she is improving, then usually we discharge the patient after 5 to 7 days. Breastfeeding, yes, it has to be given, and there is a very slight risk of transmission of infection, but the benefit is that it passes the protective antibodies and anti-infective factor. So it has to be considered. And then remdesivir, it is not contraindicated during breastfeeding. It can be considered if it is required. Now breastfeeding, now certain things has to be explained to the patient, especially if they are asymptomatic or having a mild infection. So the patient, she should wash her hands with soap and water or alcohol-based sanitizer, and then she should put her mask, and then can feed the baby. And after feeding the baby, then baby should be put in the cradle, and baby should be at least 6 foot away from the mother's bed. And the visitors should be avoided, and hand hygiene and respiratory hygiene has to be followed strictly. But if the mother is having a severe or a moderate infection, or she is having symptoms like cough, fever, or dyspnea, then the express milk has to be given, and mother and baby has to be separated. Then advice on discharge should include that a patient should give the exclusive breastfeeding, and she has to maintain a good nutrition, hydration, and whatever supplements are advised to her, she should continue, and gradually she should resume her activities. And she should follow her hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, and COVID appropriate behavior. Then we should also explain to the patient the long-term symptoms or the complications, which includes mucormycosis, and patient has to be reviewed after 7 days and at 6 weeks by teleconsultation, and usually we give us SLR tab number so that the patient can contact us. Now coming to the rehabilitation part, now again I'm not going into the detail of this aspect because it will be covered in the subsequent classes in detail. So the only thing is that the patient has to be told that gradually she has to resume her daily activities, and breathing exercise should be done, balanced diet should be taken, and a lot of emotional and psychological support is required by these patients. And we should also counsel the relatives also that they should be considerate to the patient, and they should provide the psychological support to the patient. Now coming to the vaccination part, now pregnant women should be offered COVID-19 vaccination. Now in cases when the woman is having a COVID-19 infection during pregnancy, then she should be vaccinated after delivery. And we have to counsel these patients regarding the efficacy and the safety of the vaccine. We should always tell them that definitely the benefits are there and benefit outweigh the risk. But the long-term adverse reaction and the safety of vaccine is not yet established. And after the even woman takes the COVID-19 vaccine, then also she has to follow the COVID appropriate behavior, which includes the respiratory hygiene and hand hygiene and social distancing. Then vaccination should also be offered to the lactating women. Then at the end, the take-home message is that there is a similar incidence of COVID-19 infection in pregnant and non-pregnant population, but however, the mortality and morbidity is higher in the moderate to severe category. COVID infection per se does not affect the fetus, although there is a slight increase in the risk of preterm births. Then management of COVID-19 is similar in all the trimesters. Basically, it depends upon the category, whether the patient is having mild, moderate, or severe infection. And if the woman is having a mild infection or she is asymptomatic, then the home isolation or the COVID care isolation is best recommended. And in the moderate to severe category, hospitalization is required. Now, decision for the induction and the mode of delivery, it has to be done as per the hospital protocol, and it has to be individualized. And anticoagulation has to be given to all the admitted antenatal and postnatal patients. Exclusive breastfeeding is very important, and it has to be followed unless the patient is critically ill, where the express milk can be given. PPIOCD, it is a safe, it has to be encouraged, and vaccination is safe in pregnancy and lactation, and it has to be encouraged. These are the references, and you can refer these references. Thank you for your patient hearing.